Hello, and thank you for joining me on A Psychologist Looks at Scripture. I'm Peter Doherty, a Catholic priest and a psychologist, and I'm pleased that you can join me today. In this podcast, I draw from my background in psychology and Scripture studies to provide fresh insights into the Gospels. The Gospels consistently invite us to deepen our faith, find new wisdom, and grow spiritually. There's always something more to discover together. Each episode typically runs about 7 to 10 minutes. I know my listeners are busy, so I keep my podcast short. If you have the time and are interested, please check out the earlier episodes listed on the podcast website and on YouTube. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. They truly matter. They help this podcast grow and flourish. I would like to thank everyone who responded to my request to share a comment. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Your support energizes me to keep podcasting. If you want to share a comment, you can still do so in the comments section. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, verse 6 to 8, Jesus is teaching his disciples to pray always. This Gospel will be read in churches on October the 26th, 2025. To illustrate his teaching, Jesus uses a short parable of a woman seeking justice from a corrupt judge. The woman successfully hassles the judge, wearing him down and finally getting the justice she is seeking. Jesus makes the interesting point that how much more will God grant what we ask if we only remain steadfast in our prayers? This raises many questions. Why does God often delay in answering our prayers? I seriously doubt that God enjoys watching us wait. I wonder then if there is some value in waiting. There are many examples in Scripture of people waiting. I love the story of Jesus when he was a 12-year-old boy being found in the temple. He was all ready to start his mission, but he had to wait until he was 30. In Galatians chapter 1, verse 15 to 18, we read that St. Paul waited for about 3 years in preparation before starting his missionary work after his conversion. Let me give you a few examples from Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Abraham and Sarah waited 25 years for the fulfillment of God's promise of a son before Isaac was born. We see this in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 9, chapter 21, verse 5 to 7. Joseph waited 13 years through sufferings, including slavery and imprisonment, before rising to power in Egypt. We see this in Genesis chapter 37, 39 and 41. Jacob waited 14 years to marry Rachel, serving her father Laban in love and patience all that time. We see this in Genesis 29, verse 15 to 30. I wonder then if waiting has a role to play in our developing spirituality. In full disclosure, I am not the most patient person, so I feel a little hypocritical speaking about waiting. On the other hand, I can fully understand the struggle to be patient and hold the tension. I'd like to first focus on the value of patience for spiritual development, and then explore any psychological value. I have a caveat, though. We wait for different things, and the circumstances around the waiting can differ wildly. For example, a parent waiting for their child to arrive home safely is a very different space than a student waiting for a letter telling them that they have been accepted at their chosen university. So I will speak generally, leaving it up to my listeners to tweak what I say to fit their particular situations. Results from the Timex survey indicates that a human being can expect to spend about 6 months of their life waiting in various situations, such as in lines at the grocery store, traffic delays, and being placed on hold during phone calls. This averages out to about roughly 3 days per year spent waiting. Specific breakdowns include 43 days on hold with customer service in a lifetime. Don't we love waiting on the phone? And about 27 days for people using public transit spent waiting at bus stops or platforms. Additionally, people living in big cities may spend even more time in traffic, around 50 hours annually. Overall, waiting can account for several years cumulatively over a lifetime, depending on our daily routines and activities, and of course, our length of life. As I mentioned earlier, there are many examples of people waiting in the Scriptures. I wonder if waiting for God is a positive thing. The first thing to note is that waiting for God is an act of faith. It is an act of humility, recognizing that God acts in his own time. If we can learn to wait, we gain personal freedom. Let me explain. When we are waiting for something, especially if it's significant, we tend to focus on what we are waiting for rather than focusing on the present moment. We experience God, and our faith grows when we experience the present moment. Waiting is not wasted time. Although unexpected waiting can affect us temporarily, it offers us an important opportunity for reflection and introspection. When you find yourself waiting, ask if there is something you can learn from the experience. You might gain new insight into what you're waiting for by using the time to reflect. I encourage you to consider that sometimes we are waiting for someone else to grow or learn, and we may not even realize it. People often judge their lives based on achieving goals, but the experience of process along the way is often overlooked. What if the process of achieving our goals itself has value? And achieving a goal too quickly would mean missing out on important experiences that lead to growth. There is significant psychological value in waiting for what we need. Many psychologists have studied the effects of waiting. I will focus on just one researcher, Dr. Elise Baskert, a senior lecturer in applied positive psychology at the University of East London. Recently, she wrote an article entitled, "Waiting Isn't a Bad Thing. It Actually Can Boost Your Well-Being," found in the journal The Conversation, published on September 30th, 2025. Waiting can enhance self-control, improve mental health, foster gratitude, and help clarify priorities. It also builds perseverance, tolerance, and empathy, contributes to meaning-making through reframing the experience, and encourages mindfulness and savoring of anticipated rewards. Waiting can be boring, which is why we typically do anything we can to avoid it. We fill our moments where we have to wait by distracting ourselves to keep our minds busy, such as scrolling on social media, reading the news, and perhaps even listening to a podcast. Finding activities for our busy minds is not a problem, but when we are confronted with having to wait, let us look for the opportunity to reflect and gain insight into what the Spirit is presenting in our lives. Thank you for being here today. Next Sunday, I'm releasing a podcast from Luke chapter 18, verse 9 to 14, about humility and pride. If you're new to the podcast, I invite you to check out previous episodes on major podcast platforms or YouTube itself. Regular YouTube listeners, please consider subscribing and sharing with friends who have an interest in Scripture and psychology. A new episode is released every Sunday, focusing on the week's ahead gospel, and your feedback is always welcome and essential for the continued growth of this community. A special thanks to Heather Patel Doherty and Richard Colomb for their invaluable assistance in preparing each episode. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out at peter.doherty, that's DOHERTYOMI, @gmail.com. May God bless you abundantly.